Hello, this is Mike Friday with the Nickel Independent Film Festival. We are celebrating our 25th year this year, and in honor of that, we are talking with filmmakers past, present, and if I can figure it out, maybe future as well. Today I've got joined by Mike Hickey, who is a producer, director, writer of film and book and television. So I'm really excited to have you here. So thanks for joining us.
No, thank you. I sound so much more impressive when you introduce me that way.
But I mean, it's true. You're such a multidisciplinary artist. I mean, you're into
To a
everything.
fault, some might say, yeah.
Yeah, I guess easiest question. What's your favorite?
Oh, of all the things?
Yeah.
Um, it really depends on it can vary project to project. There's stuff that I really kind of enjoy digging in and writing and kind of uncovering the story just from there. And then there's stuff that being on set can be really fun as a director or producer or AD or whatever it might be that I'm doing. It really depends on the project. But yeah, I mean, I think at the core, I often just describe myself as a storyteller, because I think everything I do conveys and tells stories in some way. So whether that's presenting or hosting stuff or writing or directing or editing or any of it, it's all at the end of the day, it's all about storytelling. And so to me, that I think might be the thing I like most is just telling stories.
It's a great thing for people, especially in independent film, to think about. It's hard to wear just one hat in this industry, and I think also in this province.
I think so. And I mean, when I mean, there's depending on what you want to do, obviously it can be really good if you are hyper focused and you have a specific thing that you know very clearly is your thing and the thing that you want to do, and it's the only thing you want to do, and there is a clear path for you to kind of pursue that. Absolutely. Absolutely follow that. But if you're somebody who can and enjoys doing a bunch of different things, if you're somebody who is a little scattered and all over the place for various reasons that may or may not be medicated, um, that's also it's all just that the ability to kind of shake it up and do different things so that you don't get complacent or bored with any given role or whatever is also good. And there's also that just like finding other stuff, like you don't know what you don't know, and filmmaking as an industry, as a practice, as an art form, as whatever, it's a very collaborative, multidisciplinary thing, and so there are a bunch of different jobs that you don't know are even available. There are roles within art departments or electric departments or whatever, whether it's um, camera or sound or production or whatever. Like there's so many different jobs that you don't even realize necessarily are jobs within film and television until you get into making it and getting into that industry. So um yeah, there's kind of spread, if you're not that like kind of laser focused person, then yeah, like getting out there and trying a bunch of different things to see what kind of works for you is great. And if a bunch of different things work for you, I am sorry, you're gonna stuck being me and, and not knowing what to do.
Well, there's worse things that can happen.
Depends on who you ask, I guess.
Well, yeah. As part of the podcast, I wanted to ask you about both. We'll talk about a film afterwards that you've
Mm,
submitted with us in the past, but also just something I'm always just curious to see what inspires people. So whether it's art in other mediums or if there was a sort of a key film that inspired a project that you've done for us before.
yeah, it's funny because when you kind of mentioned this in advance, a couple different things came to mind, and I didn't even I forgot that we were doing this today when I wore my Jaws shirt. And I love Jaws. It's a near perfect film. There is some wonky day for night in that opening sequence that always just robs it of being like truly perfect. But otherwise, it's fantastic and a really great example of adapting something too. Because if you've ever read the book, the movie is different in just the right ways to make a really efficient movie. But what I was actually going to say is The Frighteners, which is a Peter Jackson movie from 1996. I think it's the last thing he did before he got like deep into the Lord of the Rings stuff. It's also the last live action movie that Michael J. Fox starred in. Um, and it's an absolutely phenomenal film. I love it. It's super fun. It is just, just bonkers, kooky, spooky, greatness. Michael J. Fox plays this guy who can see ghosts and presents himself as like kind of a Ghostbuster kind of paranormal extinguisher or exterminator or whatever it is. But it's actually that he can see ghosts and he has a couple guys that he like a couple ghosts that he works with to like mess people up. He's scamming everybody. He can't see ghosts, but he actually kind of like he got like early in the film he gets into kind of like an altercation where he like breaks somebody's fence and they're threatening to sue him. So he sends his ghosts, and then when the ghosts show up, he shows up and gets rid of the ghosts. And then he's just like, well, instead of paying me, how about we just forget about the whole fence thing? Which is great. But then it gets into there's like a local legend of, or not legend even. There's a true crime case where there was a mass killing in this town, and there's this kind of current phenomenon where people are dying by like heart attack, but it's not really a heart attack, but they're seemingly healthy otherwise and stuff. And then you kind of find out it's all tied back to the killer from the mass spree is now a ghost who is killing people to up his like body count as a serial killer. And Michael J. Fox being the person who can see the ghosts is the one that has to kind of save the day. It's great and it's super fun, and I've always loved it. Going back, like I remember I watched it when I was like 12, like when I was 12 or 13. It was like when it first came out. I remember watching it and like loving it. And a couple years back when I was making the movie I was going to talk about as having screened at the Nickel, is a short I made called That Halloween. And that Halloween started very different than how it got made. I wrote it a long time before, and it was a story about a woman. It's kind of based on "And All Through the House," which is this old Tales from the Crypt episode, which is based on the old Tales from the Crypt comic. Like that, the comic came out in like the 50s, and it's set at Christmas, and it's this woman kills her husband and is like staging the scene, and then a serial killer escapes from the local asylum and shows up at her house, and so as she's staging the scene, it becomes this cat and mouse thing. And so I wrote a movie that was kind of a riff on that, but at Halloween. And then the twist in mine was that it cuts back and you realize it's a bunch of kids sitting in the house years later telling the story about what happened at this house because I love framing story within story. Um, but then I started to kind of when I finally got that movie made through the Picture Start program at NIFCO, it was years after I had initially written it, and I was there was stuff in the script that wasn't really working for me, and I was trying to figure out how to fix it because I had written it years before the first draft, and I hadn't really changed it that much. And then one Halloween, like before I actually made the movie, I was watching The Frighteners, and I was watching. It was the year that Haunting of Bly Manor came out, the miniseries from Mike Flanagan. And so I watching those two things, I kind of cracked this idea that about this idea. There's a like a faceless lady ghost in the Haunting of Bly Manor, and um, she's kind of caught in this kind of residual loop, which I thought was really fun and interesting. And then the whole third act of The Frighteners is plays out in the old abandoned hospital where the mass killing took place in the town years before, and it's Michael J. Fox is the only one. He's kind of constantly kind of flashing back and forth between the present day where it's abandoned and he's chasing. There's like live action, like there's kind of present day threats as well as like he gets kind of caught in the residual haunting of this mass killing thing. And I kind of took those two things and combined them to make what is the closer to that's what kind of blew up that Halloween, and I changed the format of the script a bunch, and I think it made a better movie for it. But I also watching The Frighteners that time, I also realized too how like subconsciously I had like taken a whole lot of stuff um from The Frighteners that were influencing me. That like there was already a bunch of Frighteners in that script without me even realizing it. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, I really do reference and use this film a whole lot in just like everything I kind of do. It is one of those really inspirational keystone kind of like films for me that a lot of the other stuff I do is very I don't know. I'm running out of words. It's tied to it. It's reference to it. It comes from that.
And does it mostly, do you find it's like story inspiration, or does it go beyond that, like into like the style of the film or the effects in the film?
I think there's certainly effects and stuff in the film that speak to me. Like even like what's really cool, you watch that and there's like a Grim Reaper kind of ghost in that that looks very much like the way the Ringwraith looked in Lord of the Rings. And so before I remember even like when I first watched Lord of the Rings, I wasn't like I wasn't young enough to make the connection that it was the same director. I was like, oh man, that looks like the thing from The Frighteners, without realizing it was Peter Jackson. And then like years later, I was like, oh right, this makes sense now. But yeah, like even just some of the way they play the ghost, like I've actually done an effect similar in a I did a film camp I taught a couple years ago with some ghosts and did a very similar ghost effect as The Frighteners. So there's certainly some effects and some shot choices. Like I mean, Peter Jackson does a lot of really fun like Dutch angle crazy stuff all the time. His movies, especially when he's like doing that kind of campy horror stuff, he has a really great, fun defined style for that. So there is some of that stuff, but no, it was a lot mostly like that. That's like the story was a big inspiration. The kind of iconography of horror in terms of like there was a lot of like big key tropes. There's the old abandoned hospital. There is there is the mystery of it all. There's the kind of there's a lot of gothic like cemetery stuff. A lot of things like that that just kind of play in a lot of different things. I do. He also does. It was shot in New Zealand, but there's that like weird like um kind of not quite 50s aesthetic to a lot of things.
Right.
So there's some really fun stuff that way that yeah, like all of that has always been a big um it ticks a lot of the boxes for things that I like and look for in films.
Right. And Nat, you're very like widely watched. Like you've seen a lot of film. You watch a lot
Yeah.
of film. You watch a lot of.
Yeah.
Do you find are you like a serial rewatcher? Do you tend to like seek out new stuff, or do you find yourself coming back to films often?
I find lately I'm more of a serial rewatcher. I mean for years you get to watch a lot of movies by watching a lot of movies.
Mhm.
But I don't know, I think there's something about I don't know what it is, but I feel like if I gesture broadly at the world around us, there's something about the comfort of a rewatch. When every day you wake up to like the most horrifying of breaking news and all kinds of stuff like that, like that idea of knowing how something ends is kind of nice and it's kind of pleasant. I think that might be why I've become more of a rewatcher lately. Um, I'm certainly still kind of exploring and watching new movies and watching whatever. I mean, I just like Sinners is probably one of the more recent new movies that really kind of stood out. I loved it, but at the same time too, I will go back and rewatch more so TV shows, I think, than movies when it comes to rewatching. But I mean, that's not to say like I've seen Frighteners every bit of 10 to 20 times. And the same, like, movies like The Monster Squad and all that kind of stuff are, well into, I would say I've watched The Monster Squad. I've watched Trick or Treat, like, well, plus, like, closer to 100 than zero, for sure, in terms of times I've watched and rewatched those movies. So, I mean, it certainly varies and it's kind of mood and whatever dependent. But yeah, I'm very much a rewatcher. I still like finding and exploring new stuff, but yeah, there's a comfort I think that with everything else kind of happening and going on around you, it's really kind of good to know. Because like it's also I think me and you have talked about this a whole lot over the years, not necessarily on a podcast, but horror is often like a lot of pretty much all the work I do. When it's on me to do it, it's in the horror genre, and it's I think a big part of it is the escapism of horror that um, there are rules. Things are in a lot of cases literally black and white, but there's rules. Like you know how to defeat a vampire or a werewolf or a whatever. Like those rules exist. There are ways to vanquish the foe. There are ways to defeat the bad guy, and it's kind of comforting in that way. Like you kind of know that at the end of the day, there's a way to succeed, and there's a way. And so when there's a lot of other things kind of happening, it's a really nice way to just um kind of escape everything else by just going, okay, cool. I'm gonna get scared, but I know that there's a way to I know that there's a way to win this kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a comforting idea to that. Yeah, if only there were a book for our current situation, some ancient tome we could. Well, part of the
Yeah, if
reason I
only.
oh
Oh,
sorry.
No, I was going to make it probably an inappropriate reference to things, so it's better to move on.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to ask about rewatching is you mentioned that you sort of found this new angle to approach your film with The Frighteners. Do you go back and rewatch things sometimes to with that in mind, like trying to crack a certain problem, or do you think that like that's a good strategy for independent
Yeah,
filmmakers who might be stuck?
absolutely. I very much kind of have that. Oh, I'm in the mood. Like I'm trying to do this, so I'm going to watch something similar. I'm going to watch or I'm going to read something similar to the thing that I'm doing to kind of see what people have done in the past. I very much subscribe to that idea of like it's okay to break rules as long as you know what the rules are and why they're there in the first place. And if you're going to subvert stuff, if you're going to do whatever to make it unique, to make it original and your own, you kind of got to know first why it was like it in the first place. And so for me, I absolutely will, if I'm trying to do a certain kind of subgenre or certain whatever, if I'm telling a certain type of story, if I'm trying to figure out, like if it's a folk horror thing, if it's a like specific kind of monster, like vampire, werewolf, like ghost, whatever it might be, like yeah, like I'll go back and I'll try to find stuff that's kind of tonally similar. Um, to what I'm doing and kind of watch that to kind of see how it's been done. So that one, you can kind of see those examples of how it's been done, how it's been approached, but also kind of know what's been done. So those kinds of combinations of things, but also then like kind of breaking that down and really kind of digging in and looking at the pieces of it and really kind of deconstructing and kind of going, okay, what is this? Why is this? And how can I make this my own based on all these different things I'm seeing? So like absolutely that side of stuff. To yeah, the rewatch like especially like more familiar stuff to kind of dig in and kind of see what's how I can take what I like and make it unique and my own moving forward.
Hmm, yeah. Yeah, I feel like there can be a feeling like, oh, I don't want to accidentally steal something, or I don't want to like read too much into this in case I'm, yeah, copying or, feeling like you want to bring your completely original idea to it.
Yeah, and I mean like there's also like I mean let's face it, we live in a world where there's so much of what gets made in our kind of ecosystem, whatever. So many things in terms of the bigger picture, green light for feature, green light for TV show, whatever. Like so much of it is kind of stemming from existing IP, so that existing intellectual property thing. So if you can make something original, but just still have those like really recognizable reference pieces to be like, okay, so if you like this, here is how we're going to pursue this. I mean, you and I have been working on a couple different projects that have really strong comps over the years of like, oh yeah, this is kind of like this, but and so, that kind of idea of using those kind of existing things to not necessarily like you're not like, I always talk about movies like I was talking about movies like how like Rob Zombie's Halloween, right? Rob Zombie's Halloween, if it's not Halloween, it's a much better movie.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like Rob Zombie loved Halloween. He wanted to make kind of his version of Halloween, and he certainly did. But in doing so, there was a bunch of things that a lot of people associate with Halloween that he kind of blew up, and it really kind of upset a lot of the kind of purists of that particular franchise, right? So even like the all the backstory stuff with Michael Myers in the first act of that movie, where you kind of see his childhood, you see what leads to the night where he kills his sister and becomes Michael Myers and all that sort of stuff. Like all of that's good and it's interesting and it's whatever, but it's like Michael Myers up until that point in the franchise has always been sort of an absolute. Like there's no explanation for why he is who he is. Like that's when that character kind of was best. And so like all the changes Rob Zombie made, like if he had changed what the mask was, and if he had changed some character names, and it was just that it was an homage and like it was meant to be kind of inspired and taking a lot from Halloween, but not being called Halloween, it would have been an absolutely like it would be like touted as probably one of the best modern slasher films and blah blah blah. But because it's called Halloween, everyone's comparing it, and then it's it doesn't hold up compared to because everybody loves that, and that's why it's a 50-year franchise and blah blah blah. So walking that line all the time of celebrating and referencing and homaging the stuff that you've already seen and like and making it your own is It's great, but sometimes it's even better to just fully commit to that.
Mm. Yeah, but being
I
willing to
think.
take that big turn and really just make it
Yeah,
something
yeah,
of your
yeah.
own. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think there's also, and I will say, like, obviously, reading a lot of scripts is always good. And when I'm writing something, I will often try to find the scripts that are kind of some, like, if I know something has a particular, like, really bonkers, like, horror sequence or action sequence that it, like, does kind of have like a comparable, I will kind of look and go back and kind of see how that was written.
Hmm.
Just to kind of get an idea, like not to just like copy that, but use it very much as a template to really kind of inform how to structure the scene and the way I'm describing stuff, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, for sure. Taking things backwards, saying, yeah,
Yeah.
like this sequence makes so much sense now that I'm watching it, but how was that
Mhm.
explained and how was that executed?
Yeah. How did you say this in a script, and how can I say something similar in a script?
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's some great there's some great tips in there to help people sort of
Hopefully.
come forward and try something
Yeah.
new in the way that they practice. Thanks so much for coming and
No,
chatting
this
with
is
us.
great.
Is
It's
there
always good.
anything you want to anything cool that you have coming up that people should be watching out for?
Um, yeah, I've got a short I just produced that we're in the kind of the final stages of. We're expecting a new cut of the edit very soon. That's from Peter Collins, who um he wrote and directed it's called Interview with the Devil. Peter had a film in the Nickel a couple years ago called Don't Let Them In. So looking forward to kind of getting that through and starting to do festival stuff with that soon. I've got a Bell Fibe show coming up, a Fibe TV One show, where me and Buddha Wiseman, who a lot of people know from like Grindmine stuff, me and Buddha are going to be exploring downtown and probably doing some ghost hunting along the way. That one's called
Absolutely,
Downtown's
yeah.
Old Haunts, which is coming out through kind of the Terra Nova brand. So that's coming out over the next little bit, and so those are kind of the two big ones that a lot of my like time and focus has been in on lately. So those are the things to keep an eye out for from me.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
everybody who's watching, keep an eye out for those things. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks, Mike, for coming and chatting with us.
No, thank you for having me, and congratulations to the Nickel on 25 years.
So many
I
years.
remember I remember about half of that ago when it was really sketchy on whether or not it was going to happen. So it's really kind of cool to see that the festival has still continued on and is thriving and is what you guys have been doing and you and Elling, especially over the last couple of years, it's been really great to see the festival kind of become what it's become.
That's very nice. Thank you very much for all this, and we'll see everybody at the screenings
See you
starting
at the
June
Nickel.
16th at the LSBU Hall.
All right, see you guys there.